Degrees. I'm Mike Carey, Talk 1300 News, available on the internet at talk1300.com.
It is 8:32 at Talk 1300. We are back. Look who's here, kids. Wow. The man is back this week. Here he is, ladies and gentlemen. The man.
Two women.
Steve Coffey is here. And we're going to start a new segment this week. The man and his clients. And every week, the man's going to come in. He's going to bring in a present or former client, because he does represent everybody in the area. And here's a perfect example of it. The Bronfman, can I say sisters?
Yeah, sure. Please.
Do you mind? Do either of you two mind that?
No.
Claire and Sara. Did I get it right?
Yes.
It's Sara.
Sara.
Are here. And it's a pleasure to meet both of you. And you didn't mind when I said in the hallway, so I'll say it again. You are two very controversial figures in this area. You really are. Was that your intention?
No.
No, I know. Sara, pull that right up closer. There you go, kid. Well, it's a pleasure to meet both of you. Now, my first question is one you probably wouldn't be the first question for most others. Okay? By the way, is Steve going to tell you what you can and can't answer? Is that like last Monday night with Mesley? Is that what this is going to be?
No, actually, I talked to Claire and Sara coming in. I said, listen, I'm just really part of the pain here.
Yeah.
Really am. No, I'm serious. Because as you get into this, you'll find this is something that I'm involved with them, and it's an honor to represent them. But really, I'm here today.
We'll get to the Steve part, because there's a big part here about Steve too. Got to ask Steve about last Monday night too. We'll get to that too. But anyway, how did you two wind up living here? Because you two are, is it fair to say, can I say, Steve, that they're probably two of the wealthiest people in the area? I mean, was it your dad or your grandparents that started Seagrams, or was it even beyond that? It was your grandfather. Mm-hmm. How did you ever wind up in the Albany area of New York State?
Well, that's kind of a long story, but...
That's okay. If we could shorten up the version, I'd love to hear it. I've never heard an answer to that question.
I think we both arrived here differently. I came first. I was living in just outside of Antwerp in Belgium.
Okay.
And a very old family friend of mine, of ours, came and took an NXIVM program in November of 2002, October of 2002, and called me up when I was living in Antwerp and said, "You've got to come and try this thing. This is the coolest thing I've ever done." She was a therapist and a mother of many, and just found this to be the coolest thing from her professional position.
This is NXIVM.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
From a professional standpoint, as well as from a familial standpoint as a mother. Called me up raving, said, "This is the most amazing thing I've ever done, you've got to come and take it." And at the time, I have to admit, I was a little of a snob. Mm-hmm. And she said to me, you can either come to Albany or you can go to Mexico City to take a training. I opted for Mexico City because I didn't think Albany was a very cool place. Admittedly, back then, That was before I moved
Plus,
here.
it was warmer there, right?
It was warmer, and, the Latin vibe, it was pretty cool. I'd never been to Mexico City. I went to Mexico City, I took a training. I thought it was undoubtedly the coolest thing I'd ever done, and had the opportunity to come to Albany to meet the founders and the community and so on. And it was a slow process. I moved to New York City first because I was still too cool to move to Albany.
Right.
But after a while, I really liked Albany, and I loved the work that I was doing here, and for me that was the most important part. So I ended up permanently relocating here about 5.5 years ago.
But your story, Sara or Claire, is not the same, right?
Correct. I was a professional show jumper living in Holland, just outside of Maastricht, representing the United States on tour, and I started working with the founder and the co-founder of the organization, Nancy Salzman and Keith Raniere, and they were coaching me during the Olympic trials, and I was very successful. I was 12th in the trials, putting me 12th in the country. And at a point, I moved back to this country, and essentially the best place for me to be, given that I was working with Keith and Nancy, was in Albany. So I bought a farm, created a professional facility, and moved up here.
So you're both here to be close to the founders of NXIVM.
Correct.
That's why you're both here.
Yes.
And Mary and Keith are the founders, correct?
Nancy, I'm
sorry. Nancy and Keith are the founders of NXIVM. What is their, if you don't mind, what is their connection to this area? Are they natives of this area?
Keith, he went to RPI. He's lived here for over 30 years.
Okay, so his association goes back to RPI.
Yeah, and Nancy Salzman, she moved up here. Her the father of her children, her ex-husband, is a doctor, and he moved up here about 25 odd years ago, and she brought her children up here.
Okay. And you two have been here, so you two have been here 5 or 6 years, both of you.
Yep.
And you have your own home together? Is that how it works?
No.
Oh, no. Because I understood that one of you had, am I wrong, one of you has a farm somewhere in the area?
That's me. I have a farm
Claire
up in the
does.
hills in Delanson with the horses.
Okay. And Sara, where are you?
I live in Colony.
Oh, okay. So you two are actually a little bit apart even here.
Yeah, I actually also live in Clifton Park.
Oh, you do? Okay,
Yeah.
so there's a couple places.
Yeah.
Because if I'm not mistaken, Ranieri actually lives in Half Moon, right? Keith Ranieri?
Yeah.
Does he call it Clifton Park?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me stay with that for a moment here, because NXIVM, which you two openly talk about, you've done it long before you came in here. How they doing, man?
They're doing fine.
Okay, they're okay? All right, I just want to make sure. The man is here, everybody. Steve Coffey. This is as quiet as Steve has ever been, by the way. Steve usually has something...
Sometimes it pays to keep your mouth shut.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Knock it off. You openly talk about this, and you've done it in all your press conferences. I mean, you've never gone anywhere where you haven't answered questions about NXIVM. Why, if you're so open about it, I mean, you are girls of means. If nothing else, you are girls of means, clearly well-educated. Why do we keep hearing negative things about NXIVM if you two embrace it as openly as you do? Claire, I'll start with you.
I think because, understand, several years ago, NXIVM never had any controversy. The controversy about NXIVM was created. It's a paid campaign actively to be negative towards NXIVM. And if you really evaluate all of the data, it's pretty obvious that that is so.
I agree. Do you think the campaign of negativity started here in Albany, or did it start before?
No, it didn't start here in Albany. It started elsewhere, and I think, like a fire spark inspires a fire.
Okay. Is this campaign of negativity, in your opinion, something that started by local medias, whether it be Albany or elsewhere, or people that have had a bad experience with NXIVM?
I think neither. I think that, I think media is a tool. Media can be used for both good purposes and bad purposes. I think that things aren't necessarily started by the media, but obviously, like anything, the media has the potential to make more of it or less of it, depending on what it chooses to do. The campaign was inspired negatively, not necessarily about even people who had been in the organization. It was a campaign, unfortunately, inspired by a family that I think was not
happy with results, or
not necessarily happy with results or membership. I think there was an internal family conflict.
Okay. In the leadership of NXIVM?
No, within the family.
Within
a certain family that inspired the conflict.
Okay, there was let me make sure I got this straight. There was a family that were members of the group, and they split off?
One member of the family came and took a training.
Okay. And the other member of the family then started this idea that it was mind control or something of that nature? Is that how it worked out?
Yeah.
Okay, is the family's name known? Because I've read a lot of stories about NXIVM. I don't ever remember reading that anybody felt it was due to a split in one family.
Yeah, I don't know that it's been publicized, but
okay.
I think suffice to say, like many things, or maybe all things, it's a case of human interrelationships, family dynamics, let's say, that perhaps went awry, and not for any other reason than, imagine that you're in a very close family situation. Mm-hmm. One of your children goes and does something and then changes his behavior, which is better for him. I mean, even in our own family, and I was explaining this a little while ago. Some of my relationships with my family members, I was much less. Before I came and took an NXIVM course, I was much less driven in my life. I knew less who I was. I was less happy. I had certain self-destructive patterns, like many young adults do. And I remember talking to one of my family members and saying, and they were like, you're doing so well, you're so much happier, you're successful in your life, all of your relationships are going better. But they said, but I don't know who you are anymore. I preferred it when you were miserable and used to come and cry on my shoulder.